Hari Om. And, can we have a couple of mics? Okay, you're working on it. Cool. Hari Om. Come on in, come on in. So with this, okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll do our opening prayers, and then today we will be getting into 2 new chapters. We'll see how far along we get. And this will now be connecting to the thought process that's there. Anyway, let me not get ahead of myself. All right, so with that, Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right, so if everyone can just open their books to chapter 20, sorry, not 22, that's in my book. In your book, it should be called What is Culture? What is Culture? So if you all need to share page numbers, please do so. I just want you to have this open and ready so that when we are ready to jump into the reading, we'll be prepared. Yes. Okay. Do I need to stand somewhere else, or is this audio okay? Okay. So let's take a moment again to refresh where we are in the thought process so far by chapter. We had seen first harmony and poise. This is talking about finding harmony and poise when we rise above the ego and we account for and we take into account the entire macrocosm, meaning, and we had gone through a couple of exercises, right? When we think of dharma and being a part of society as a whole, we can then easily be able to put our ego aside. So that's a strategy of thinking to gain harmony and poise. So in order to take into account what is this macrocosm and what is it made of, Pujya Gurudev then walked us through the difference between religion and science. And he also then further defined what is religion. So just to recap from here, when we talked about religion versus science, we saw the 4 ages of mankind, right? Where we went from perception, you just live like an animal, you react like an animal, that's the age of perception. Then there's rudimentary thinking. This is the age of observation, where they try to correlate certain phenomena they're seeing and ask why and how. Best example I always go back to is mango leaf shakes when it rains. Doesn't necessarily make sense, but they're trying to make some correlation. It is also the age of superstitions. That's a way of remembering, age of observation. But that refinement of understanding continues, and it becomes the age of scientific inquiry. Now it's proper correlations. Okay, what is gravity? What is the water cycle system? Well, how does the solar system influence weather here? These are just examples. But thorough analysis of logic. Most important thing, the conclusion or the question being answered by science is how. How does crop grow? How does the rain work? How does this thing work? How? But when there's enough inquiry done, it will naturally lead someone to the next stage of evolution called the age of contemplation, Now they're inquiring why. Who is the one that is putting all of this together and why? Now we're going beyond just perception into the subtle layers. This is the evolution man has gone through, and why religion becomes really important, because science brings us to the culmination of scientific inquiry, but religion picks up where science cannot begin to answer. So our order is science, then religion. Science tells us the how, religion tells us the who and why. So that's an important understanding and relationship between religion and science. So then when it comes to religion, we went into further detail saying, what is religion? It's made of two parts. Any shout outs here? What are the two parts? Yes, right? Ritualism and philosophy. Philosophy is a systematic analysis of the phenomenons that we see. Systematic analysis of the phenomenons that we see. And ritualism is the application of that philosophy. This is the knowledge, this is the sadhana, this is the practice. So the ultimate guide that Puja Gurudev says to practice religion, a little bit of this, then a little bit of that. Then a little bit of this, then a little bit of that. It's baby steps along the way. You cannot jump entirely into the ends of philosophy and say, I'm religious. You cannot dive into the ends and extremities of ritualism and say, I'm religious. You need both. And in order to develop, you do a little bit of sadhana, understanding a little bit of the why. Then the more you understand, the more you practice. The more you practice, the more you have to understand. They have to go hand in hand. This is where we had ended our thought process so far. So what is Puja Gurudev picking up now? In this section, it is called, what is culture? Okay, this is also an important question to ask. In a way, Puja Gurudev is addressing some common phrases and beliefs we have. Whenever we ask the students, what is Hinduism? Is it a religion? Sometimes they'll say no. It's a way of life. It's a culture. Don't we also, tend to define it like that? Why are we having a struggle to call Hinduism a religion then? Because we're combated with the Western definitions of religion, or Abrahamic definitions of religion, which is prominent in academia like theology and all that. Theology is this department of studies of religion, and they have a certain framework to assess what is a religion and what is not a religion. And it mimics what is the expectations in the Abrahamic religion, which is natural because this entire Western hemisphere predominantly practices Abrahamic religions. Hinduism is not common. So of course you will see that reflected in academic realms. But when Hinduism enters a conversation, we throw them for a loop. They don't know how to define us. So what is this definition they go through? From the Abrahamic standpoint, in order to be considered as a religion, you need a book, you need a God, you need a prophet, and you need commandments. 4 things. You need God, who is an entity, who is apart from this world. You need a book that tells you what God is talking about, what his ideas are, what his dictates are. You need a prophet that will hear God's words and spread that communication. And you need commandments that are the do's and don'ts of how to live life. If these 4 things are there, then it's called as a religion. Okay, how does that apply to us? Does it? No, we are bigger than this box. We are a religion, but we are more than this. Why? Because when it comes to God, for us, God is not enough of a word for us. Because we have words like Paramatma, Brahman, Atma, that represents that highest substratum. And at the same time, we have words like Bhagwan and Ishvara, or Devi, or Ramchandra, all these names. These are now for the avatars that come. Then on top of that, you also have Devatas, Rakshasas, Asuras, Devatas, like Indra, Vayu. Now you're like, okay, who's who now? If you say God, who belongs in that category? We have a much broader understanding of what is the presence of Paramatma, Ishvara, and Devatas. That whole function is a whole ecosystem that doesn't fit into the word God. So we don't know how to put ourselves in that box. In fact, we break the box. Then, what's the next one? Book. Okay. Some of us will automatically want to say Vedas. We have 4 books, 4 Vedas. They're not books. If we think about it in the past, before Veda Vyasji, where was our knowledge systems? Every guru had access to every philosophy that was there because it was their subjective experience. If that Paramatma is everywhere, we drop our identity and recognize that divinity within us, what book do I need? I am what I am. I'm sharing what I am. I have no need for book. Then what was Veda Vyasji's role then? He realized that as the yugas are going, our mental capacity will diminish along with it to protect the experiences of these Mahatmas, to help it be passed along so that our lineage will not be broken. He codified it. So he went to all of these different gurus and ashramas, recorded what their experiences was, and organized it in such a way that we can access it. Do we call that as our book? No, it breaks again. This is our codified collection of experiences. And even today, like Puja Gurudev, who themselves have become masters, they are the pramanas for shastras. We don't say that the book is the law. We say Mahatmas prove that what is given in these shastras are true. So we have a very interesting relationship with book as well. So again, it's not quite what they ask us. What was the third one? Prophets. Prophets have a unique role that they alone can hear the word of God. And what they dictate is what is the truth. So God spoke to them and gave them instructions on what to do. Sometimes we want to say rishis are our prophets. Can we say that? Not really. Because there's no God speaking instructions to the rishis. The rishis have already become that divinity and are just explaining and expressing what they are. They say Shruti because that is what has been divined through them, because they've tapped into what already exists. It's not an instruction. And they're not commanded to do something as a service to the world. Each of these Mahatmas in their own unique way are serving the world because they can. Nobody told them to do it. Puja Gurudev became the globetrotter. He brought shastras to us, whereas Swami Tapovan Maharaji, he was a recluse in the Himalayas. People came to him. You have Swami Vivekanandaji, whereas you have Swami Shivanandaji. So each one has their own person. Nobody was given instruction. They're not prophets. They are great role models and examples. They are the lakshanas that become our sadhana. They are the examples that we follow, but they're not our prophets. So again, we break that rule. And what's the last one, fourth one? What was it? Commandments. This we should also be ready to break down very easily after our conversations, right? Dharma is often said as our commandments. We say, Manusmriti says you should not marry this caste versus that caste. This Manusmriti says women are allowed here, not allowed there. Those are your commandments. Excuse me. Wait a minute. Shastras, Dharma Shastras, and all of our teachings explain to us the entire spectrum of behavior. You, Ravana, if you want to behave like a Rakshasa, you can. But even Ravana got moksha at the end. Why? Because his mind was solely on Bhagavan Ramchandraji as an Ari, like as an enemy. But yet his single pointedness also gained moksha. So now you're like, wait, am I not supposed to be Ravana? Meaning, they have a vast description of what are all the things people can do, what are all the different mindsets that can happen, and where does each one lead. That exhaustive explanation is what's given. After that, we have to look at it and say, where am I? In what position in life am I in right now? What circles of responsibilities are given to me in this circumstances? What is my goal? And how best may I get there? What do I want and how can I reach there? Shastras are there to say, I give you the entire map. You figure it out. Of course, Guru will be there to help find the best match of what sadhana we should pick up, but the entire spectrum is given. Take Gita, for example. There is different spots where it gives us values, gunas and durgunas, sugunas and durgunas, right? In one of the syllabus, if I remember correctly, 6th grade, they have the list of values. I'm not remembering the verse. Ahimsa, Ajivam, Guru Upasana. 5th grade, right? So you have a list of values. If you flip 2 more pages in Gita, it also gives you the full description of Durgunas. Matsarya, Lobha, Kama, Krodha, all of that is also listed. We don't have commandments. We have descriptions, thorough analysis, and it's up to us to figure out what we want to do. Again, philosophy versus ritualism. Now you tell me, what is Hinduism? Is it a religion according to Western definitions? Heck no. In fact, we're more than that. In fact, we will break your definitions. Don't put us in a box. I will not call myself a religion according to yours. I am a religion according to this. Then where is this idea of I am also a lifestyle, that Hinduism is a way of life? Now we come to Hinduism is also a culture that we live by. Where is this subtle application? What is this all about? That's what this chapter is going to dive into. So sorry for the long-winded explanation, but I thought I'd talk about it so that we have that in our mind as we start interacting with others outside. But when it comes to what is religion, one of the first sentence right off the bat is awesome. Culture is a measuring rod of civilization. It's a measuring rod. Right? Religion is what to do. Culture is how well am I doing it. What to do and how well am I doing it. And anyone from, I think it's 9th grade, who's teaching Hindu culture? We have to ask those teachers to come, but who taught Hindu culture in the past? You have, right? How did they define, if you can remember right off the top of your head, what was the definition of culture given in that book? Mm-hmm.
Given place.
Sorry, you're right.
It's a practice or a practice and rituals for the people follow that live together, move together, and work together.
Okay, almost. Yes, it's in that same vein. Anyone have any other recollections? If not, let us see the definition right here, because it comes here again. So if the next sentence, I'm going to take the introduction, set you up, and then we'll get into the cadence of reading. But here, the very next definition here, when a set of people live for a long period of time in a particular geographical area, respecting certain philosophical values and virtues of life, there emanates a fragrance which we call as culture. A beautiful definition, very comprehensive, right? So there are 4 elements to it. One is time. One is people. You can't have culture among tigers. Then geo and 4 is values and virtues. 4 things here. You have to have a group of people. You can't have one person living in Antarctica and another one living in New York and say they are part of the same culture, right? Even us as Indians, even though we call ourselves Indians, do we not see a stark difference and we say we're part of a different culture now? In fact, I've asked our students, how do you identify yourself? And they say, I'm American Indian. Not Native American. They say, I'm American Indian because I was born in America. I practice Indian cultural habits, but I'm not Indian. Bharat Indians are different from American Indians. Why? Because the location, the people are different, the time is different, and geography is also different. Time especially, whenever generations get into arguments, you see time. The values that are held by Gen Z versus boomers, that's a difference in time. So Puja Gurudev here continues and he says that the first 3 is pretty basic and common to most structures, most groups of culture. This is natural and common. As long as a group of people come together, time and place is already set. It's automatic. But where differences come about is this: virtues and values. And I really liked his last ending of that definition. The eminent fragrance is called culture. So it's not even saying this is religion. It's the effects, the way things look like, they feel like, the effects down the road, that is called as culture. So culture is a effect of religion. Now, I'm going to hit pause here. I'm going to go into another little rant for a second before we get back into this. I skipped the second sentence in this paragraph because now I want to come back to it. The difference between an uncivilized, barbarous country and a civilized nation lies in their culture. A very potent sentence in there. That difference between uncivilized and barbarous and civilized nation is because of their culture. So when I was reading for another class, this comment of being a cultured individual or not being cultured individual came up somewhere else. This came up in Gita, chapter 18, verse 9 and 10. At the very beginning, and in part of his commentary, Puja Gurudev brings up this idea of what it's like to be a cultured person. So imagine in your head right now these two images, the uncivilized, barbarous individual versus a man of civilization and culture. What's the feeling you get? What are the images you have in your mind? If you had to, now I'm going to open this up for questions here. In your understanding, how would you identify as the key difference between someone who is uncivilized versus civilized? What makes them, what's the difference between the two of them? What makes them different?
I think with the civilized, it's more in harmony. It results in harmony, not and the opposite in uncivilized.
Okay.
So it may be harmony among themselves, but between another, when they interact outside of their culture, it becomes unharmonious.
Okay, that's one level. Amma, if you can pass the mic to Amma back there.
I would see barbarous as more self-centered, arrogant, not open to ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and my view is the right view, and that's it.
Me, myself, and I. I'm the most important thing. Yes, I think there's a mic on this side.
So culture is not about the roads and how good the parks are. It's not about the environment. So we have electricity, internet, and all that. It's about how we behave.
Yes. Excellent point, because when we think of civilization, especially in history, you think of, the modernization of the civilization. Modern, ancient civilization versus modern civilization. And what do we talk about in history books? Technological developments. We have plumbing systems now where they didn't have it then. We have Wi-Fi now, they didn't have it then, so we've advanced. But as you mentioned, it's not external. It's internal state of being, and both of you have mentioned that. One from the individual standpoint, arrogance and self-centeredness, and because of that, Amma, what you mentioned, interaction with others also gets polluted because of that. Okay. Amma, you had also raised your hand at one point.
It also comes with education.
Mm-hmm.
So people who are, there are people that are well-educated, self-centered, and act. But sometimes, like most of the times, people behave well that have good education.
Yeah.
That's my point of view.
Fair enough. Education becomes really important in distinguishing the two. Yes, Amma?
But many times, you see a mix of both, right? So then how does that, it's still a culture because it's the same time, this the group of people, but you see both qualities, right?
Yes.
So how do you relate that to culture?
Good question. And I'm going to leave it right there because we're going to see that answer, and that's good because that means you're thinking along what Pujya Gurudev is about to present. So one of the ideas that came to my mind when we were speaking, and this is not an insult, please, this is just a concept I'm aware of, but the God complex in doctors, isn't that sometimes a case where the doctor feels extremely powerful in what they do as a profession? They hold people's lives in their hand. They are the factor between life and death. Sometimes when that arrogance comes into place, they walk around with that arrogance that I am like God. So I'm pulling this concept from TV shows, I'll be honest with you, from House and all that, the God complex insurgents, right? Anyway, that's just a simple example to show that even someone who is educated can still become barbarous. And that leads to the same add-on to your question that we see in a set of culture, we see so much variation. So can we nail this down? This is exactly where we're going to go into. I'm going to give you a tidbit from what I've learned from Gita, and we'll apply that as we read Pujya Gurudev's commentary. So in Gita, it says, the concept that's being talked about is sattvic tyaga. And I'm not going to go into all that definition, just know that tyaga is letting go, but letting go of what? In this context of Gita, they're not telling us to let go of actions. That would be erroneous. You can't stop acting, you have to continue to act. What is it that I have to let go of? Selfish desires and egocentric motivations is what has to be tyagd. Sorry, I'm Englishifying some of these Sanskrit words. I have to let go of that tendency. That becomes sattvic tyaga. Up until this point, they talked about tamasic tyaga and rajasic tyaga, which are abandoning the wrong things. The right thing to abandon is that selfish, egocentric desires. Now, from there, he continues and he says, Sorry, I need to read you verbatim, otherwise, because his English is way too good. I can't mimic that. So he said that it is one who practices sattvic tyaga, he is the one that is educated and cultured. So there, that idea of culture comes again. That person becomes vibrant, rich in a subtle way, and he becomes attractive. When there's someone who's barbarous versus cultured, are we not attracted to someone who's cultured? And they are not when they've abandoned their selfish desires, they don't become like a dead leaf, a dried up, crumpled, useless leaf in the wind. They become dynamic, powerful, inspirational, and they become far more enthusiastic than anyone who's selfish in their actions. This is the greatness of what it's like to be cultured. And then he moves on. This is the most important part. He says, only animals have the right to be consumed by instinct. Only animals have the right to be consumed by instinct. Being cultured means to be better than his instincts. To be better than the animal within him. That's what it means to be cultured. Why? Because we have an intellect. We are the only ones that have an intellect able to override any animalistic tendencies within us. We use it to access rising above the waves of our impulses. We use it to judge thoughts in the light of an ideal that we hold ourselves up to, and that intellect has the capacity to stand above those impulses ultimately. Go ahead.
So the way I was thinking is what you're saying is how to achieve that culture.
No, that is the definition of being cultured. When someone who does not fall victim to their impulses is cultured.
But what if we are in the journey of it? We'll never achieve that so-called the epitome of culture.
Don't give up. We will all get there. My point is, we are becoming cultured. The more and more I practice rising above my ego, right? I'm coming right back to this. The more I practice it, the more cultured I'm becoming. So one of our concepts we have in our practices is samskaras. Samskara means that I am creating a cultured individual as they grow through their stages. So think about samskaras, the 16 samskaras, right? You have birth, then you have the first food morsel, then you have the first letter that they learn, then upanayanam, then the most famous one is vivaha, vivaha, then antima samskara. Each junction in our life that is so important, we want to elevate it to a divine state so that we know how to live not as an animal, but as a divine cultural individual. So these samskaras are helping little by little to raise us. So maybe in a way, the definition itself becomes the process. I hope I was able to answer that question. Yes?
I think probably the key that they're trying to say is not to react, but to think and act, right? And maybe
Yes.
that just defines like being cultured.
Yes.
You just don't impulsively or instinctively react.
Yes.
Yeah, but you just think and say, okay, and do what needs to be done. Yeah.
Exactly. And think back to the topics we've been taking up, especially the three main values, Satyam, Brahmacharya, and Ahimsa. Can we not see that adhering to a higher ideal, which is above an animal, having Brahmacharya, self-control, to live by that ideal, and to be compassionate for those that have not yet risen to that highest level, Ahimsa. All these three things will make us cultured. So I wanted to place this idea, and now let's see further how Puja Gurudev expands on this enactment of culture here. So I'm going to read the last sentence of the first paragraph, and then I would like volunteers to then help read one paragraph at a time afterwards. So I'll start, and then who'll be my next volunteer? Just raise your hand if you guys talk a lot on this side. So we'll start on this side, get them to start talking to. But of course, we'll weave our way across here, okay? All right. I'll finish this last sentence, and Uncle, if you could pick up the next paragraph from there. The difference in culture, therefore, lies in the values and virtues of life entertained by the people. Okay? So this last one, component number 4, really defines what is our culture. So if you may take up the next paragraph.
The values reported by the people are, in the beginning, ordered by external exigencies of life. Thus, in the first age of civilization, geographical and climatic conditions and environment influenced the people and determined their values of life. Once such values are determined and a culture is set, the external environment will have little influence over the culture thus established. In Western countries, the land was rugged and hard because of severe climatic conditions and constant snowfall. Consequently, the people became hardy. They had to train themselves to fight unrelenting nature and procure from her whatever was required for their self-preservation. Conquest of nature thus became a fundamental trait in the character of people in the West. In sharp contrast, the East provided land with plenty and prosperity. With the slightest persuasion, the land yielded an abundance of flowers, fruits, and vegetation. Rivers were ever full, and springtime flourished for nearly 8 to 9 months in a year. In such harmonious expressions of life, everywhere the people imitated the nature and quite naturally developed a culture based upon serving and giving, instead of fighting and procuring. Thus, a culture emanating peace, tranquility, and love developed in this country, whereas materialism took roots in the West and inculcated the idea of conquest.
Okay. This paragraph, if we really thought about this, brings a lot of things into question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that is the case, then we cannot really blame why the materialism exists.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot.
Yeah.
Right? Not really.
Absolutely.
The survival of the, you just survive.
Yeah. So if we look at descriptions of Rakshasas in our Shastras, really speaking, they are materialistic in attitude. So I know that's a lot loaded in that sentence there, but Rakshasas doesn't mean demons. Rakshasas doesn't mean monsters. But if we look at the definition of Rakshasas, they are the ones that run after this world in a materialistic sense to find happiness. I want the most amount of wealth. Why did Ravana go steal Kubera's Lanka? He's after material wealth. Then any of the Rakshasas you see, I want eternal life. Who is the Rakshasa that used the hand on top of Bhagavan Shiva and he turned, Vasmaswara, right? I want to have this strength to be able to turn any of my obstacles into dust. Isn't that what we're all about too? In competition, I want the ability to conquer anyone that comes in my way. That's the strength I need. So So if we really look at the quality depicted by each of these Rakshasas, they are that animalistic lifestyle that we have within.
Yeah, so I think she's talking about the east and the west, right? And
Huh.
then that the west has the area itself, the land has characteristics that make them that way.
Yeah.
So I think because earlier we said 4 parts, right? Geography and time is one of them.
Mhm.
So that's why maybe people move from the west to the east when they want to even change their nature. And when they realize that, you know, the west is not their nature, then they go towards the east. I think that the geography also defines the culture to a certain extent.
Yes, and
Looks
you
like.
took the words right out of my mouth. And that was one of the implications to think about, and especially in today's day and age, from us coming from the east to the west, we're in conflict with this.
But my question is then, how are these people who are defined by the environment going to rise above their ego, because that's always pulling them down unless they get out of that place and elsewhere. That's one. Second one, because of modernization, there are other ways to create that abundance, artificially or whatever, induced abundance. And so that should give rise to, okay, now you have enough. Then you had to struggle. Now it's a little easier because of modernization. So get out of that materialistic.
So
That's two ways to think.
two things I'll address from your question then. The first sentence is actually from here. The very first sentence of that paragraph, it says, in the beginning, the values respected by the people are ordered by the external environment of life. Thus, the first stage of civilization. Geographic and climate conditions influence the people and determine their value of life. First stage. Once such values are determined and culture takes shape, the external environment will have little influence over the culture established. So there's an evolution in the influence of. So environment sets the culture, but once that culture has solidified, then it will remain that way regardless of what happens around the environment. So this might be a controversial topic or analysis from this. That means that if a Western society started off with ruggedness and they developed a culture of competition and contest, then that solidified, then doesn't that continue to exist no matter where that person now goes? So now if we think about it, today's modern capitalism is still this. If we talk about materialism and being part of the Western culture, it's this.
So we are living in a contradicting geography.
Yes. Yeah, this should hurt. This should very much hurt. And this we are struggling with when we see in our own kids. When we are trying to instill with them what it's like to be Bharatiyas and to be a Hindu individual, they are born in the West. They are born into a culture that is solidified as the Western culture.
But she has a point that, you know, it is not the person's mistake if they were born there.
Well, I'm not saying it's a mistake or not. It is what it is. It's a natural description. We have to face the facts of what we're seeing in the world around us. Our goal is to become above those. Is this healthy or not? What is a higher level of living? Now I have to put effort to go over this. I have to put effort. That is why practicing religion is so hard. This is, if religion was easy, then it would naturally fit into where I am. I have to put in effort to grow above this.
But my point is, sorry. So my thought was that may have been the case, and I'm saying because of modernization, newer technology advancements, we are now able to artificially create that abundance. Meaning artificial, let's say, you know, the genetically modified, whatever. Right?
But may I throw a curveball in that particular point you're making? Is technology as natural in maintenance as nature? No, there's so much effort that needs to be put in. It's still a struggle to maintain abundance when it's not naturally produced. It's still a fight. Yes.
So it'll change over generations. Would that be possible?
It can only change if we put effort. If we default to that culture, we will still be here.
Got it.
Amma, you had a question back there.
Yeah, so my question is, to be that kind where you are not competitive, there has to be a critical mass of people following certain things, isn't it? Otherwise, it is an upward battle that tends to be more losing, and the resolve to continue the way becomes harder and harder.
Why do you think Hariji keeps joking around saying we have peacefully conquered Frisco? Why do you think that most of us are Indian when we come to Chinmay Mission? Foreigners don't come here. It's the occasional, if they have curiosity, they come. We will still see this natural tendency to flock among people that share similar values. When I was growing up, so I'm a middle generation right now with what's going on. I'm not young, I'm not also either old. When I was growing up, and we were talking about marriage, of course I escaped that game altogether, but when we were talking about marriage, what was the biggest debate we had? Swamiji, this is a very crude joke, but Swamiji would share this every now and then. Please don't marry a BMW. What? What is BMW? White. See, it's a rough way of saying it, but the point is, marry someone that has same value systems as you, because if you don't match on your values, you'll have struggles in your married life and raising children. That was just a fun way of putting it, but do we not recognize that different groups of people raised in different geographies based on different solidified cultures hold values differently? Now, how do you tackle a husband and wife that have two separate values, teaching their children that has to be the merge of both of them? One is okay with eating meat, one is not okay with eating meat. One is okay with beef, the other says no. What is the kid gonna do? Easy way out. It's a natural instinct to live like an animal, meaning to take the easy way out of things. It's harder to control, not go to Burger King, not go to McDonald's when it's so freely available and saying, no, I'm a vegetarian. You know how many times I have to read the menu just to check if there's no eggs in some things? So when effort and self-control becomes the way of living one set of values, when the other is available, you will naturally see the kids slide. So my point is, anyway, the conversation is, here, this is a comparison of the two. Now, when we look at the East, something that was of natural abundance. We had all 4 seasons, all types of variety, and you can just spit a tamarind seed to one side and the tree will grow right then and there, right? And if you look at history, the European Euro continent enjoyed spices because where did they come from? India. Bharat, that entire Caribbean, like that tropical area, they imported cinnamon, clove. If you look at any of their recipes, anything that's outside of potatoes, milk, and salt and sugar, then it's usually had traces back to India or any of the tropical areas. This is a natural occurrence. This is neither good nor bad. This is just how naturally things have evolved. We have to accept the way the world is structured, then figure out, how do I navigate this? What do I do about it? So now let's keep going. I know there, yes. The East is now following West. Why? What are you fighting in the East? No, I'm speaking specifically about values. But what element of it, though? Sorry, I'm really drilling into your question. I would say here, selflessness takes more effort than selfish. And when effort and self-control is lacking, we slip into that. To be selfless means that I have to give up what is pleasurable or displeasurable to me. I am ready to suffer for someone else's sake. I am willing to go hungry to feed someone else. That takes effort. That takes a strong willpower from within, a strong character to be able to do this. When that doesn't come naturally, we will default into selfish ways. And so this is Kali Yuga. This is also a natural explanation of the decay of character. We are going to start to see the lack of self-control. We are going to see more and more uncultured behavior. We're going to see more barbarous ways of acting. It's natural. But does that mean we give up the fight? No. Because every time dharma slips, what happens? Bhagavan comes as an avatar to help reinstate that dharma. This is sanatana dharma. This will never end. We are going through cycles. We have to be aware of it and do our part to continue our fight. So anyway, this is a really good topic. I think we hit like lava right now. So let's keep going and complete the thought process that Puja Gurudev has on culture. We just saw the beginning of it. So now let's look at even in our day-to-day, right? Would you mind taking up the next paragraph?
Even in our day-to-day experiences in life, we can clearly observe how external environment and happenings exercise initially their distinct influence on the development of our culture. A poor boy living in the rugged atmosphere of the slums seems to develop a tendency to protest and fight, while other born of opulence and security is generally more refined and cultured. This can be observed even in a bus queue where the latter waits and takes his turn while the former often protests, rushes and forces himself in.
Mm-hmm. So now what we have done is mimicked what happens at the macrocosm to a microcosm, meaning from a national or big group of people's behavior to now an individual. Even if someone grew up poor, aren't they more aggressive in their behavior? There's more fear in them, there's more insecurity, and because of that, they will be more aggressive in their approach to make sure they're not suffering that they have experienced in the past. That will be natural. We're not saying it's good or bad, that's just the way things are right now. Whereas someone who has abundance, and I really like this example, they'll wait in line patiently. Why? Because that's me. When I go to India, I struggle a lot. I'm like, there's a queue, I'll wait. And then like 10 other people will join in front of me, and I'm like, okay, this is me being an American in India. Like, I don't know how this world, like, I'm not in the same mindset when I go to a different culture, and I will see that even in a queue or a line like that. I get really nervous when I go to India, and I feel bad. I'm like, I want to identify as an Indian, and I want to identify as a Bharatiya, but I know there are cultural differences even within me.
So this act of like barbarousness or being, the capitalistic nature exists both in the East and the West.
Mm-hmm.
That is the truth, actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, okay, everybody in the West are not having any good values,
Yeah.
like as you said, right? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Again, it's what is the value being practiced and the predominance of that value. There's an overarching pattern that you can identify from the East and the West. Of course, there are exceptions within, but predominance, what is the major flow of that river? You might have a stick that gets stuck and goes the opposite direction. That's true. I'll give you a Puranic example, and then I'll come to you. In Ravana's own family, Vibhishana was a stick against the river. He was the sadhu, born as a Rakshasa, but because of his self-effort to keep his mananam on Sri Ramchandraji, he was the sadhu among the Rakshasas. There will always be exceptions. So, but this again, general pattern, observations of patterns. Yes?
No, my question is completely maybe different.
Mhm.
If we have two different cultures are here, so now we are bringing this knowledge. We should bring this knowledge to the other people who are actually they already diverted. Or how do we cope up with them? Because we are following it, but they are actually stopping us. So I don't
Welcome
know
to
how
my
ask the question,
conundrum.
but
Welcome to the issue of Chinmay Mission, why this is not full. Because, and this I will come all the way to the beginning of the chapter, why do people show up at the doorsteps of religion? When they've suffered enough in life that they're looking for something higher. When they've come to a point where living materialism and being selfish has led to disasters and sorrow, and they're sick of it. They're like, this cannot be the way of living, this cannot bring me joy. What else is there? That's when they come to religion. So until and unless that person internally evolves through life experiences, until they gain that little sense of maturity, then you will see them come to these doors. That happens on its own. It happens on its own in every generation. So that's what will, and the fact that Sanatana Dharma continues to stay available for anyone who seeks is, the most unique part of our religion. Our doors are always open. Any guru is, you go to a temple, it's in every other corner in India. A guru, there's so many of them. You can be part of 100 different, there's so many lineages of Guru Shishya Parampara in our own culture. This is the point of being accessed. But Shishya has to come to the Guru when they're ready. Puja Gurudev did something unique. Hey guys, don't forget this is available. See, and he spread a wide net. But at the end of the day, we have to approach when we're ready. And then that life will teach us. That would be my answer for that. Okay, so let's keep going.
Civilization flourishes with the promotion of culture, but when cultural values deteriorate, the civilization of a society breaks down, and we have seen in the fall of the Egyptian, Greek, and Roman empires. The great religious masters of this country, using their own ingenious efforts, have time and again revived the philosophical and religious values for which the country stood for, and thereby arrested the deterioration of culture. When culture deteriorates, there is an increase in barbarism and immorality in the country, and its philosophy is misrepresented, leading to confusion and chaos among the people. This, in short, is more or less the sad condition of the present world. The need of the hour is to arrest the deterioration by reviving the great philosophical and religious values of life.
Mm-hmm. So, here, there's a direct correlation between value, culture, and civilization. When values are lost, culture is lost. And when culture is lost, then the civilization will be on the decline. So let's think about that for a second. And let's go back to our original definitions of value and culture. Value is when we rise above the ego, when my ideals is for the benefit of society, to be selfless is the root of all of my values. When I maintain that, I have a sugandha, the good smell of culture. That's the fragrance I emanate because I stand tall on selfless values. And when more and more people live like that, the more vibrant that society is. Yes, you will always have that bad apple in the barrel. Yes, it will be there. But if the majority is strong and can uphold that, you will see that civilization thrive. On the flip side, when it starts to deteriorate, individual becomes rotten, culture becomes rotten, therefore overall, when enough bad apples come together, the whole barrel rots. Now, if we even think about what's happening in today's situation when it comes to Western culture, especially in the last 15, 20 years, we've been dealing with wokeism, right? I'm bringing that idea in here as well, because wokeism, if you look at the thought pattern behind every angle of practice they're trying to promote, it's to get away from structure, to get away from some form of discipline. So let's take gay marriages, for example. They said that the orthodox structure of male and female marriages should be broken down. Whoever you feel like marrying, whoever you feel like being in a relationship should be the way. You should make this available. Granted, they are, struggling with prejudice and oppression is what they're trying to correct. But if we open up that doors way too much, then isn't it feel like we're slipping back into the desires and tendencies we have within the self? So now let's come back to Shastras and Hinduism. What do we say about marriage? What is the purpose of marriage? Marriage is a rina that we are offering where this is pitra rina. We are going to continue this civilization from that which I've come to help continue that lineage. My marriage is meant to have children, and those children is what I owe to my ancestors. The function and purpose of marriage is simply for that. At the same time, we do it in a sattvic way, where she or he becomes my saha dharma charin. That's the name given. Both of us will be each other's support in elevating our own individuality. This is a structure we have within marriage. Now, of course, there are exceptions. What if, you can't have children? What if, if an exception happens, there are remedies for it. But what is the main point? You can't lose that main point. You can't lose the focus that we are here to rise above our ego. When structure is there in place to help with discipline, to help rise above impulses, which is not natural. Given any second, we'll slip back into our animalistic tendency. We need structure to help us go up. When that's broken down, we will start seeing it revolve the other way. So now we see America trying to fight wokeism, saying, no, we need structure back. We need our culture back. We had ways of living in the past. Yes, we want to fix the issues of oppression and unfair structure. Sure, let's correct that. But don't take away structure altogether. That's not going to be the solution. We will decay over time. So the point is, rise above the ego. Do values follow that bhava? And when more and more people practice that, we develop a culture, and that keeps the civilization strong. Which is why, and I'm going to conclude here, but we will pick this up next week. If we look at Puja Gurudev's emphasis throughout his text, he will talk about the individual evolution, but always bring back why it is vital to become a national citizen, why that national identity has to be uplifted, because this one individual is part of that culture is part of civilization. We have to uphold this. So this is the cycle that we're in. Today was a heavy class. But this is where you can see Puja Gurudev really becoming passionate about reviving the generations after independence, reinstilling some vision and direction for us, and especially how to help us when we are in this paradoxical situation. We're not in India, we're not in a Hindu culture. How do I maintain values when there are other different, I'm not saying bad or good, when two separate sets of values are presented to me and my children, how do I navigate this? This gives a good guidance of what's going on. Yeah. Yes.
So the education system here and the education system now in India, it's westernized.
Yep.
So, we are all into the same rat race now.
That is a matter of fact. So just to do some Chinmay Mission plug-in here, if you see, there is efforts being put, one, to correct history books to help us bring back our identity as Hindus. Second thing is there's a promotion of Gurukula-style education systems. CIRS, Chinmaya International Residential Foundation. Residential is the key. They want children to come when they're about 8th grade, or I think less actually, I have to remember what grade they're accepting. They live in that school until they graduate. By living in that school, they're able to feel that Gurukula system where the entire character is worked on, not just a training, vocational training. That's why when Swami Swarupananji was here this last year, he said, value-based education. Bam, we're right back here. Value-based education to produce cultured individuals that can uphold civilization. That was the view. We're trying to put effort to go back. But it's not easy. It's not like overnight. We have to come to see the value of it ourselves and then put effort to continue that. So, sorry, one more plug. Youth Empowerment Program is our miniature model of this thing as well. We ask chicks to come and reside within Mangalam Ashram for 2 months. I know just living in that lifestyle for 2 months has a huge change on our character. I'm still referencing Yup when I went through it. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. We make it more fun in Labor Day, so. But again, these are models and simulation. We're trying to bring back some of the things that were lost along the way to help maintain values and culture. This is what is part of our struggle. But we shall see more. The Puja Gurudev is not done yet with his ideas. If you're really interested, go ahead and read this chapter. And we'll come back and continue next week. So with that, thank you again so much for your patience. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you so much.